Ernest Chu, Wall Street investment banker, founder of 3 public companies, spiritual teacher, and author of the forthcoming book, Soul Currency.
Who would like to choose to create more money for what they do?
Yes.
Who would choose to have work be fun and fulfilling?
Yes.
Who would choose to be paid very well for having work that's fun and fulfilling?
Yes.
I raised about $150 million for these companies and added about $1 billion worth of value to the companies. I began to see that there's a more powerful capital, which is spiritual capital. I began to understand that it's spiritual capital that actually creates everything that we are looking for. Instead of the material world having its spiritual equivalents, as most of us have been told, it's actually the spiritual world that you live in, perhaps not always aware of it, that has its material equivalents. I was $1 million in debt and virtually destitute. I realized this wasn't about a crisis of liquidity and having no money and failing in life, etc. This was actually a wake-up call, sometimes by a feeling of loss. You're going to feel that something's really valuable. I began to realize I have a lot of things. I have a lot of assets. You know, good education, I know people, and on and on and on. I didn't think of them as a real asset like a balance sheet. You know, I thought of a piece of real estate as an asset. Enlightenment is not a process of having to go to more, listen to more people who are very clear. But it's a process of subtraction. It's not a process of addition. So in a sense, you know, you already have everything that you know within you. You're worrying about process. You're worrying about the effect. You're not worrying about really who you really are.
Ernest Chu discusses that to accept your good is to see yourself as one with spirit.
Really, in a sense, we are all one. And it becomes, quantum physics always understands this and makes it very plain to us that there's only one. But yet, we look into this room and we look into what we see, our appearances, and we say there's many. So there's a tendency to believe that we have to do it ourselves, and especially when we get to a point where we think, I don't have anything. So it's literally, you lose that connection to that infinite source, that one source where you have everything. This is not a religious concept. This is really, in a sense, a spiritual concept. And here, if you really choose to be satisfied and happy, you have to embrace what you're really about, which is spirit. There's no getting around it, because that's who you are. The major point is that as you begin to have a relationship of non-duality with spirit, you actually don't have to worry about whether you're doing this law or that law. It's just going to flow. Your clarity about decisions that you're making are going to follow. The currency of spirit is love. Now, I'm talking about love as an energy, as a creative energy. The universe is all creativity. Everything is changing. The universe is constantly changing, more so than we are even comfortable. Our bodies are changing. Everything's happening invisibly. And so, literally, turn that into an asset. Don't look at it and say, oh my God, I'd rather be in this one spot. If you did, you'd probably disappear. So, literally, that is one of your greatest assets, and to really understand all the things that are related to creativity. The world is waiting for it. It really is. It's waiting for you to really get to that point. And there's not a limitation on the amount of good. It's not being rationed. In fact, when you go out and reach for your greater good, you now are creating more for others. And so, literally, you are really see yourself as having that oneness and that aspect of God expressing through you, then really the responsibility is up to you to do this. When you start a company, before you sign your first lease, issue your first stock, set up your first incorporation with your charter and your board of directors and so forth, you basically invested your spiritual capital. And that's what's actually that's what's actually creating the value. When you begin to focus your spiritual capital on these things, whether it turns out to be a project or a company, don't worry about the form, because it's the substance that counts. When people worry too much about the form. Then what happens is you think, okay, I'm going to be putting my capital and energy toward my dream. Guess what? What happens is that spirit says, yes, you're on the right track. And guess what? Instead of you dreaming the dream, what happens? The dream starts dreaming you. And all these things that you never, ever expected start to unfold.